Before we start working on step 2, I just wanted to answer the question in the for discussion subsection of the previous video that I forgot to answer. The question is right here: what would happen if versioning was not enabled on the bucket? So as you remember well, so versioning we enabled, and if we hadn't enabled, what would happen is that we wouldn't be able to launch the pipeline. So whenever you launch a pipeline that uses an S3 bucket as a source, that bucket needs to have versioning enabled. That is the answer. All right, so now we're ready to start working on step 2. And in step 2, we're going to focus on building our first stage of the pipeline, which is the linting stage. So we're going to focus on this piece of code here. So if I go back to, let me just close these ones. Let me open this again. Oops, actually, that's the one. If we go back here, so that's the one that we're looking for. So I'm just gonna uncomment this. Put this down a little bit. Right, so now let's take a look at the requirements. The name of the stage should follow the naming convention team ag, cf, and lint. So like team 1, team 2, team 3. Already explained why in the previous video. So let's do that. So remember that team 1, that's the namespace parameter. That's what we're going to be using. So namespace dash cfn lint. Then the artifact is being fetched by the pipeline, not by this stage. So that means, actually, let me just put a description here. Code build project to validate CloudFormation templates. Right, so the artifact, it should come from the pipeline, which means that this stage here is not going to be fetching the code from S3. So the pipeline is going to be fetching the code and passing to the stage. So that's what it means. So here it needs to be CodePipeline. So that's the type of the artifact. And then moving on, the environment for the stage, which is this part here. So we need the type, the compute type, and the image. So the type is going to be a Linux container. And this should run on a general one small instance. And then what else? The image should be this one here. Okay. First, let's work on the type. So that should be Linux container, all uppercase. The instance should be, so that's the name of the instance, build general 1 underscore small. And the image should be AWS CodeBuild Python 3.6.5. So image should be this. Okay. Now next one is the service role arn. So this means whenever this Linux container is launched, it needs a IAM role in order to perform, operations on AWS. So that's what we're going to be providing now. And if you remember the template that we launched in the build account, it had a few parameters, right? And one of them was the ARN of the IAM role that we're going to provide here. So this means that we're not going to go to IAM, grab the ARN, and hard code in our template. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell the template to go to parameter store, fetch the value of the ARN of the role, and bring them back. If you've never done before, there is a link here for the documentation, which is the using dynamic references to specify template values. And this is the syntax that we're looking for. So we're going to have curly brackets and then resolve service name. So in our case, the service name is going to be SSN. And then the reference key is the parameter store parameter name. And then here you can see that it can be SSM or SSM secure if it's encrypted. In our case, it's not encrypted, so we don't need that. So it's going to be only SSM. So let me copy this first, and then let's go back to the code. The IAM role ARN is going to be curly brackets, and then in the middle, is going to be resolve colon, and then the service name, which is SSM, and then the parameter name. Here, instead of team 1, I'm gonna interpolate the namespace parameter for the template. It's going to be /dojo/team1 IAM role cfn-lint CodeBuild service arm. And one more thing that we need is the version. So at the end, you need to specify the version. I don't know if there's an example here. Yeah, right here actually. Resolve SSM parameter name and then the version. So the version is going to be, it should be 1 because we only deployed once. Every time you update a parameter, the version increases. So because it just launched, just one off, it's going to be 1. So here the version at the end, :1. All right, now let's work on the source. The source type should be CodePipeline. So as I said, the code is gonna be provided by the pipeline to the stage. The stage is not gonna get the code from S3 directly. Here should be pipeline as well. So source type pipeline, and then the build spec should be 0.2. and have a single phase which is install. And I'm just gonna quickly open the build spec here, and you see that there are a couple of phases that we can have. So install, pre-build, build, post-build, etc. But for this one, we're only gonna need the install phase. So 0.2, I believe it's already 0.2, so we don't have to worry. Install, and then let's see the command that we need to put here. Yeah. So right now we're just gonna put echo echo hello world. Echo hello world, because we're not gonna work on the logic here. This is just to make sure that things are working. So if you see hello world in the pipeline logs, that means your stage is working. And once we're done here, we just need to update the stack. So let's do that. So everything else is commented. All right, so that's good. So let's run the same command, but the difference here is that we need to update the stack, not create. So let's update the stack, and the rest is the same because we didn't introduce anything else, any parameters, regions to the same. So let's just do this. Oh yeah, of course, we have to save again. Let's go. I actually forgot one thing here. Because I'm using a interpolation for the parameter for the template, I need to use a sub. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Yes, and one thing you're going to notice here is that I'm not going to cut my videos, right? So whenever we get an error, we're going to try to fix it because I think that's the best way to learn things. If I did a perfect video, you're probably going to have some issues, and you might not know how to solve it. So that's why every single error that I get here, I'm going to put in the video and I'm going to explain how to solve it. All right, so that looks good now. Let's try one more time. Save it, Renan, save it. Don't forget to save it. Okay, now it worked. Actually, does anyone know how to save this automatically? Because I hate having to save all the time. I don't know if there's any option here. I can't see anything. I don't think so. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so now that our stack is finally being updated, if we go to the CodePipeline interface or console, and we click on build projects, we should see our cfn-lint build stage right here. So that worked. Let's go back to the challenge, see if there's anything else we need to do. So the definition of done, if we go to the CodeBuild projects console, you should see our project there, which we saw, so that worked. You should not run at this point because we're gonna do that later as part of the pipeline. And just to finish things off here before we go to step 3, let's go over this for discussion. When we assigned a role for the project, we had to fetch from parameter store, and we ended up using this syntax here, which is resolve SSM and then the parameter name. Now the question here is, what other way can you fetch a parameter from parameter store without using this syntax? So let's go back to the documentation about using dynamic references. And so here on the left, you would click on parameters. And then here on the right, SSM parameter types. And so these are the parameter types that are supported. And then you have SSM parameter value string, or if it's a string list that you're fetching, then you use this one. Basically, the way it works is, let me just copy this one and I'll show you in the code. So coming back here, what would happen here is that we would have a new parameter. So let's say that we want to fetch the role for that stage. So I'm just gonna call it cfnlint roleArn. And the type, that would be this one here, because I'm fetching a string. And then at the bottom, instead of using that syntax, we would have this, like this, right? So it's a different way of fetching a parameter for parameter store. And I don't know if it's simpler or not. Some people like this way, some other people like the resolve approach. So it's really up to you which one you prefer. And the only thing here is that if you use this approach, the parameter name, you would have to specify whenever you launching or updating the stack. Just to give an example here, so let's update the stack, and then we would have value team1. First, I had that parameter, and then this is the second parameter, which is cfnlint roleArn. And this is the value of this parameter, which is the parameter that I want CloudFormation to fetch. And if we execute this, so there, I've got a syntax error here. So CloudFormation update stack. And there you go, the stack was updated. And so that's just using another syntax for fetching parameter from parameter store. Okay, so I think that covers everything for step 2. So we saw that we have, again, very quickly, we have our build project. If we go to build details, we can see our build spec, which is echo hello world. And so when we execute the pipeline and the stage is executed, we should see this in the logs. All right, so next up, step 3.